I don't know. It's a little ridiculous if you ask me.
Where am I supposed to come up with the money for this?
Everybody's on
budget.
No,
I don't plan on this
washing
break.
machine. Get this done.
How am I going to cover
Of course.
this?
All
now
we got
the
to
lawn
do is
my problems that are
person on this.
Why would I
can't take
this?
sick for
All
me?
the drama.
Everything else,
None of it.
I
Him mowing the lawn
makes a
takes out
difference.
none of it.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
In
in the wall.
We don't have to
argue like this. Nobody has to hold house discussions.
We
Because
got
nobody
to
cares
care
about
about
I don't. Everybody's minds are set.
I don't know what
Nobody
they are.
Nobody wants to feel
I don't know
about
because they're
Nobody wants to
outdated.
talk.
I want to
Everybody wants to argue.
I
got to go walk around. There's no point to any of it.
Always makes us somebody. I don't get it. Somebody.
Why are you wasting my time with it? Nobody should even waste time with it. That's all it is. It's wasting your time. Time we don't have. I don't got it. Maybe you should know about why maybe I don't even have time tomorrow. Maybe today's it. And I'm wasting it arguing about mowing lawn grass.
I don't really know what happened. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. True story. I wanted to be an archaeologist and explore faraway places that were hard to get to. The history part was cool, of course. But seeing places and things that most other people didn't get to see, and the adventures that got them there, they're what grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me with excitement. I wanted to carve my way through jungles with a machete. I wanted the hat and the whip. Maybe if I'd been a little smarter in school, maybe if I'd understood about focusing more and actually working towards something instead of just stumbling along. Maybe if the teachers and my parents had seen something different, maybe if I'd been a different kid. Maybe I'd have followed my dreams instead of them fading away and forgetting about them. In about the third grade, I remember writing something about wanting to be an archaeologist, digging for dinosaur bones and exploring pyramids. I wrote it, I remember it. Then sometime in high school, I had a writing assignment about what we thought we'd be in 10 years. You know, what you'd do, how much you'd make, something to give you young adults an idea of you were on track or not on how the world actually worked. I didn't even do the assignment. When grade school teachers ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I highly doubt there are many children that say, "I want to work indoors in a factory." I wanted to be Indiana Jones, damn it. What the hell happens to us as we get older? It's probably partly our own blame for being lazy and falling in line with the rest of society. But just maybe, there aren't enough important people in our lives at a young age telling us, you know, the right things. I don't mean the old you can be anything you want to be, because in all honesty, that's just not true. I mean going further than that. What do you really feel passionate about? What are you always thinking about when you can't be doing it? Okay. What if you could grow up to do that, and it's what you made your living at? Let's look into it. Most of society falls into the same bullshit, going through life just paying the bills, wishing you were doing something else, all the while watching the minority of society actually doing it. I'm nothing close to an archaeologist now that I'm an adult. This is not what I wanted to be when I grew up. Working in a production plant. That's a term to make factory sound better, by the way. Fixing broken machines every day, the same ones that broke the day before and will probably break again the next. Walking through zombies sitting at machines and managers upstairs staring at computer screens. It's what I do, but it's not who I am. I did realize the other day, though, that me and Dr. Jones still have something in common. Remember that scene where his class ends and he gets to his office? He finds about 50 students all waving papers and talking all at once, trying to get his attention, everybody pleading for just a little bit of his time. And he tells them, "I'll take your names and I will see you all in turn," and closes his door. But then instead he climbs out the window and ends up on an adventure. I started writing a few years ago, about the same time I took up fly fishing. Fishing was my escape. It always was, and writing became a way to make it last a little longer, even when I wasn't out there. If you've ever read a book, a story about someone fishing or hunting or hiking or exploring, any of that, then you know it's better than a movie because you're there with the writer. You're living another life from wherever you are. It's really why I write, to get away from my daily grind life and take other people with me. The way I figure it, the things that impact you the most in the least amount of time are probably the things you should be trying to spend most of your time doing. I work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. I might only fish for a couple hours a week and write those stories on my half-hour lunch breaks. We only hold a fish for seconds. Get where I'm going? We only hold a fish for seconds, yet its impact is 100 times what fixing some stupid machine at work does for me. So I write bookfuls of stories about life where fishing happens. That's me climbing out the window, just like Indy. On one side of that window, he was Dr. Jones. On the other, he was Indy. I don't know which I'd consider worse, catching small fish or getting skunked altogether. I guess the worst would be going to work. Unless, of course, work ended up becoming writing fishing stories, but what are the odds of that? Writing fishing stories doesn't feel like work, so the old cliche, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, becomes true. It brings me back to the original question of what I would consider worse, catching small fish or nothing at all. They all make for good stories sooner or later, so I'd have to say that using the word worse doesn't seem to fit anywhere at the same sentence for me. Worse relates to something that could be wrong. When it comes to fishing, short of drowning, nothing could be wrong. And there's that chance to be right even in drowning, while fishing anyways, because another cliche thing people say all the time. That thing about dying doing something you love. Writing isn't what I do for a living, but then again, neither is fishing. I'm just your typical everyday Joe getting through life one day at a time. One job at a time, one fish at a time, or more often one fishless day at a time, one story at a time. These days, fly fishing and writing are the only things that make me feel alive. So I guess perhaps they aren't what I do for a living, but they are what I do to live. I started fly fishing because I was getting bored with a spinning rod in my hand, and to tell the truth, there was something romantic at the time about the mystery of fly fishing to me. The images of loops in the air and the arch of a slim 9-foot rod. At the same time, I'd always thought of writing being somewhat of a romantic thing. I was a fabricator for a lot of years, and my shop was filled with all these old tools. One of my favorites was a cast iron drill press from the 30s. It still ran on straps rather than rubber V-belts. A friend had once told me that there were plenty of new tools that could replace my old and weathered machines, but that I was too much of a romantic to switch to new, streamlined, and more efficient equipment. I laughed at him at the time, but now I can see what he meant, and that maybe he did know what he was talking about after all. Telling stories is possibly the oldest tradition the human race has ever had. Even before a spoken language, there were always cave drawings of animals, of human figures in pursuit of them. And imagine the grunts and nods of approval in the background while bushy eyebrows raised in excitement as the storyteller scratched out the scene, reliving the story and putting it up there for future generations to marvel at. Stories have always been important to us and always will be. The stories are where I find them, but I go where I'd like to find them. There's plenty of stories everywhere. There's a story at work every day, multiple stories. There's a story while I'm trying to start my lawnmower before it won't start, and I kick it back into the shed, and the lawn gets taller and the neighbors all glare. Those aren't the stories I want to tell. So I come out here to look for the real stories, the ones I think are worth telling. Maybe the ones that aren't worth telling and the ones I feel are worth telling go hand in hand. Kind of like the light and the dark. I suppose there's some truth to that. I think it's all interesting. I try not to dwell on it. But it's true. There's a struggle. There's a balance that has to be kept. I think most of the time, most of society loses on that balance. Look at the world. Everybody loves to say, oh, making the world a better place. Well, you know what? If we were, it would be. So we come out here looking for the stories. In the end, you're going to be left with stories and regrets. That's what you're going to have. Anyone that says they don't have regrets is fooling themselves or just plain lying. Every one of us has regrets. But I think as long as your stories outnumber your regrets by a good percentage, you've probably done more right than wrong. The idea then should be to avoid the regrets as often as possible. There's still a story behind a regret. But let's face it, no one wants to hear about what you could have done. And only a few really want to hear about what you've done. So make your stories worth being told. You weren't born to just pay bills and die.
You're still here? Why are you still here? Subscribe already.